Will the Secretary please call the roll?
Senator Rocky Adams. Senator Wilson.
Here.
Senator Yates.
Present.
Representative Bridges.
Here.
Representative Gordon.
Here.
Representative Marzian.
Here.
Co-Chair Lewis. Chair West.
Here. We have a quorum and we are duly constituted to conduct business. Are there any, the first matter of business is approval of the minutes. Are there any additions or corrections to the minutes? Seeing none, is there a motion to approve the minutes? We have a motion and a second. Without objection, it is so ordered. As a matter of announcements, as always, if you want to speak for or against a particular regulation, you need to sign up at the back. And if you haven't signed up, please do that at this time. Please call the first regulation.
Office of the Attorney General, 40 KAR 9020.
This administrative regulation amends to create an online submission process for an annual certification report to replace the prior quarterly notarized certification forms.
Would you please identify yourself for the record?
Jessica Bowman, Khaki Opioid Emission Commission. If I can't say it all.
Christopher Thacker, General Counsel to the Office of Attorney General.
Thank you so much. There are no amendments to this regulation. Any questions from members of the committee? Seeing none, please call the next regulation. Thank you.
Personnel Cabinet, 101 KAR 2034, 2102, 3015, and 3045. All regulations have staff suggested amendments.
101 KR 2034, 2102, 3015, and 3045 contain compensation and leave requirements for state government employees in classified merit or unclassified non-merit service. 101 KR 2034 and 3045 amend provisions for employees in classified or unclassified service respectively to clarify salary provisions, establish rehiring provisions for laid-off unclassified employees and demotion provisions for classified employees, increase the number of critical position premiums available for an appointing agency from 1 to 3, revise provisions related to weekend premium payments and ACE awards consistent with current practices, update incorporated material, and make technical changes. 101 KR 2102 and 3015 amend leave provisions for employees in classified or unclassified service respectively to allow up to 6 weeks of paid leave per 10-year interval for an employee who gives birth, adopts a child, or becomes a foster parent, or for an employee who has a serious health condition that makes the employee unable to perform work duties, and with supervisor approval, provide 1 day of paid leave per calendar year specifically for adverse weather instead of requiring an employee to use and make up adverse weather leave. The staff suggested amendments make technical corrections to comply with the drafting and formatting requirements of KRS Chapter 13A.
Would you please state your name for the record?
Rosemary Holbrook. I'm the Assistant General Counsel for the Personnel Cabinet.
Jamie Caldwell. I'm the Commissioner of our Department of Human Resources Administration.
Thank you so much. There are staff amendments. Is there a motion for approval of the staff amendments? We have a motion. We have a second. Without objection, so ordered. So we have before us the Personnel Cabinet regs as amended by staff amendments. We have groups that want to speak and ask questions on this issue. My first question is, it allows an additional 6 weeks of paid leave for birth, adoption, or foster parent. Refresh our memory, what is the current amount of time that they're given currently?
So for the current, for our annual leave program, the new employees can get 12 days per year. Depending on seniority, the more senior employees can get up to 24 days of annual leave per year. And then with sick leave, every employee accrues 1 day per month for a total of 12. So for a total, you have anywhere from 12 to, you have 12 to 24 annual. So you have a total of 5 to 7 weeks of annual and sick leave that are available per employee depending on seniority.
So my question is, this 6 weeks is not adding to an existing 6 weeks or something. This will be,
correct.
basically 6 weeks added to the 12 or 24.
Correct.
That's kind of what we're doing here.
Yes,
Okay,
correct.
Gotcha. Okay. Before we get into the other speakers who have signed up to speak, do we have any questions from members of the committee? Seeing none, okay. If I'm going to have some others who have signed up to speak come forward. Up first, we have Nikki Boyd with the March of Dimes. And if you don't mind, I'm going to do this all at the same time. If you guys could kind of step to the side, I'm going to bring kind of everybody up at the same time. We also have Brittany Elam with Kentucky Voices for Health, and we have Jackie McGranahan with the ACLU to come forward. If you would, please make sure your green light's on. We'll start over here to my right. State your name for the record, and then you're free to proceed.
All right. Hello. Excuse me. Hello, my name is Nikki Boyd. I'm the Director of Maternal and Infant Health Initiatives for March of Dimes here in Kentucky. So, Chairman West, thank you for having me today to testify in front of the committee. I, again, work for March of Dimes, and we fight for the health of all moms and babies here in Kentucky. Welcoming a new child into a family can be one of the most fulfilling and exciting, yet challenging and stressful events in a parent's life. While every family is unique and has different hopes and needs and desires for their child, we all want to give our children the best start. In Kentucky, more than 52,000 babies are born each year. And in 70% of those homes, both parents work. And while most babies are born healthy and full term, March of Dimes has a report card that states that Kentucky received a D- on their preterm birth rates at 11%. Some babies are born too soon and they're too sick, and so they may require a stay in the neonatal intensive care unit. A lot of times a mom may have to stay with her baby in the NICU for upwards of 2 months. And sometimes a mom is so sick with a baby before she's even given birth that she has to spend time before she even gives birth. That can be upwards of a couple of months. It can be stressful and overwhelming to navigate these complications. So while we can thank you, Kentucky lawmakers, for adopting critical policies like Medicaid expansion and postpartum extension to support healthy starts for moms and babies, without dedicated paid leave, too many parents are raising their financial security by taking the time needed without pay to care for and bond with a new child. And when a child is born preterm and needs a longer hospital stay, the need for support is even greater. Studies have consistently shown that paid leave reduces turnover costs for businesses, it boosts employee productivity, and leads to higher workforce participation among women. Additionally, paid leave promotes employee loyalty and morale, leading to greater job satisfaction and decreased absenteeism. Paid leave also has clear health benefits for both parents and babies. An international evaluation of paid leave policies showed that an increase of 10 weeks of paid maternity leave resulted in a 10% lower neonatal and infant mortality rate and a 9% lower rate of mortality of children under the age of 5, even when controlling for other known risk factors for infant and child death. And what's more, studies have demonstrated that infants whose parents have access to paid leave are more likely to receive essential medical care, immunizations, and breastfeeding support. And further, during the critical early months of a child's life, parental presence significantly reduces the risk of infant mortality and enhances cognitive development. So on behalf of March of Dimes and the thousands of families that we serve here in Kentucky, we respectfully urge Kentucky's Statutory Committee Admin Regs long description Review Committee to recommend to the administration that the employee paid leave under leave requirements under classified service be amended to be made available on an annual basis and not simply once every 10 years. In conclusion, Kentucky's future depends on our investments that we make today. Paid leave is a proven solution that can save lives, reduce health disparities, and support families. March of Dimes thanks the committee for your attention to this matter, and we stand ready to work with you in advance of these critical investments. Thank you.
All right, good afternoon, everybody. My name is Brittany Elam, and I'm here speaking on behalf of Kentucky Voices for Health as their policy specialist, but I'm also a Kentuckian who cares deeply about family well-being in the public workforce. And let me start by saying that we are both grateful to the legislature and now to the administration for recognizing the importance of paid parental leave and paid family medical leave in the state.
If you could you pull that microphone a little closer, please?
Gotcha. These are two very important and different forms of support for working families that the policies here attempt to speak to. These regulations take an important step toward healthier families and better employee retention. And while this will no doubt benefit thousands of state workers in Kentucky during their public service careers, we think that the administration should go further. The current policy only offers 6 weeks of paid leave once every 10 years, and this is for childbirth, for foster care, adoption, or for medical needs. And now, unless we expect families to plan out these births or adoptions or their medical needs, like for dentist appointments, this simply doesn't reflect the reality for most families. As part of our outreach, we collected comments from 75 Kentuckians, many of whom are state workers, and over we heard the same thing. While the policy is a step forward, the 10-year restriction and the 6-week leave mean that many employees won't be able to access this benefit more than once. One of my own colleagues, someone many of you may know, just gave birth to a beautiful little boy, and I believe he's back. Well, he might be gone now. And she was sending emails right after she gave birth. While she was on leave, she lost child care coverage for her twins due to the flooding in April, and now her mother's health has declined dramatically. Her husband is a state employee, and who, had this happened a little bit earlier or afterwards, could have benefited from the 6 weeks of leave. But currently, they are both burning through PTO and looking for child care that can take 3 children at one time, which we know can be a struggle. And this is their reality, as caregiving demands are nearly unnavigable some days. But Kelly and John's story is not unique, and many families face these obstacles. And this is a clear example of how unpredictable and overlapping family needs can be. Each committee member should have received a document this morning with all the public comments that were submitted in response to this regulation, but I did want to highlight some of the things that we heard. Many of the state workers who responded called the 10-year limit unrealistic for growing their families. Nearly half of the respondents reported having more than one child by birth or adoption less than 10 years apart. This means that they would have been ineligible for leave for both children under this policy. Others describe needing more than 6 weeks to recover or running out of leave before the arrival of their child due to complications during pregnancy. And one worker even tied the lack of leave to her experience with perinatal mood and anxiety disorder. Overall, many said that the 6 weeks should be the baseline and not the cap. And these stories are not outliers. They represent a clear and urgent theme here that families need flexibility and support and not more restrictions. A 2020 study from March of Dimes and the American University found that states with paid parental leave policies for their workforce saw a 20% drop in the number of women leaving their jobs in the first year after welcoming a child, and up to a 50% drop after 5 years. Research also suggests that 12 weeks of paid leave is essential, especially to those who are recovering from childbirth. Returning to work after just 6 weeks, particularly following a C-section, can jeopardize the health of both mom and baby. Other experts have found that good paid leave policies have contributed to the overall health and development of children, noting an 18% reduction in respiratory infections and a 27% decrease in RSV hospitalizations among infants who are under 8 weeks old. And what's more notable is states like Georgia, Louisiana, and Tennessee allow leave for every 12 months. Kentucky's once per decade limit would be a national outlier. It would also put us behind 36 other states and DC that already offer more flexible policies for their public workers. And again, while we are grateful for the recognition of the importance of paid parental leave and paid family medical leave policies, we urge this body to consider future legislation or an update to the current regulation to make paid family leave an annual benefit for the full 12 weeks. This not only aligns with the Family Medical Leave Act standards, but also the standards that President Trump had set forward for his federal employees in 2019. We believe that no family lives in predictable 10-year increments, and no one should be forced to choose between financial stability and being present during critical life events. Paid parental leave and paid family medical leave are not mutually exclusive policies, and with your leadership, we have the ability to not treat them as such. And thank you again for your consideration.
Thank you, Chair West, and members of the committee for allowing me to testify today.
If you could please state your name for the record.
My name is Jackie McGranahan, and I am a Kentuckian, a parent, and I am also senior policy strategist with the ACLU of Kentucky. And at the ACLU, we are deeply committed to reproductive freedom and racial and economic justice. And today, I am a part of the chorus of people with valid and serious concerns about the proposed regulations for paid parental and medical necessity leave for state employees. While I applaud Governor Andy Beshear's leadership advancing a new paid leave benefit for public servants, the current version of this regulation falls short of meeting the real-life needs of working families in our state. The most noticeable shortfall is limiting the access to paid leave to once every 10 years. That's not only impractical and unprecedented, it's also very unrealistic in expectation. Why limit paid leave to once every 10 years? Especially when we know how many life events like births, emergencies happen so much more frequently. No other state in the nation imposes such a restriction. Kentucky is the only one, would be the only one. This is not a distinction for which our Commonwealth should be known. We must be clear, paid parental leave is not a perk. It's a public health intervention. It's a racial and gender equity measure. It's essential to support the well-being of both our state employees and the children under their care. Families don't operate on 10-year timelines, and all of us know that. We experience life events, births, adoptions, foster placements, medical emergencies, and the list goes on. And I'm telling you, if I could plan it, I would have set it up differently. And this is common for all of us. Sometimes this happens in rapid fire, sometimes in a matter of years, but I don't think it ever happens on a predetermined 10-year schedule. The current regulation disregards all of that, and as a result, it risks making it unstable for those who desperately need it. This is a pivotal opportunity for us to do better. As written, the regulation is too rigid to fulfill its intended purpose. I urge the Personnel Cabinet and policymakers to amend the proposed regulation to remove the once-per-decade restriction and align Kentucky's leave policy with national best practices, which typically allow for at least 12 weeks per qualifying event. At the ACLU of Kentucky, we believe every Kentuckian, including our state workers, deserve access to time off when it matters the absolute most. So please, can we ensure this policy works for the people it intends to support? And thank you so much for your time and allowing me to speak today.
Thank you so much. Thank you for your presentations. What we're going to do right now is we're going to open the floor up for questions of the speakers that are at the table. Do we have any members wishing to ask questions of the speakers at the table? Seeing none. Representative Marzian.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and thank you all so much for your testimony. And it's so important because when you have a baby, it's really tough sometimes, and you need to bond with that new baby. So what is the infant mortality rate right now in Kentucky? And I think the speaker from the March of Dimes said this would actually make it less, or we'd have less problems with that. So you probably know that.
I would not want to speak on a rate I'm not exactly sure of, but we are one of the highest states in the nation in terms of infant mortality, absolutely. In terms of preterm birth, in terms of maternal morbidity, and in terms of maternal mortality. I'm sorry, what was your other question? Oh, okay, yeah. Absolutely. So not only are we talking about physical health of mom and baby, but also perinatal and maternal mental health as well. I was speaking with a mother in Eastern Kentucky recently, and she really had some struggles for an accidental complication at her C-section and had really bad turnout for one of her kiddos. And as a result of that experience, it led her to some pretty serious mental health complications afterwards. And if she had an older child and she was traveling an hour and a half to access care because of the complications that she experienced with her kiddo. So, yeah, real life stories that we see out there in the field.
Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Senator Yates.
Thank you each for your testimony. And I was sitting here trying to do my own research too while I was listening to you. I nerd out up here sometimes, so I thought hopefully you could help me, and not to catch you on the spot, but notice how Kentucky is ranked at the very bottom. I guess bottom 11% or so in different graphs and charts, depending on how you look at the number. But do we know about what the median number of weeks that we're seeing in other states doing comparison? I know that, have we been able to look at that from a national model of where we're at and how that may impact us? And then also, as you look at the regs that we have here, is there any that you propose that may have a real dramatic impact and change in the mortality rate and otherwise health, any other changes that you see in our regs?
Thank you for that question. We're seeing very modest 4 weeks up to 12 weeks, and that's anywhere from 4 weeks is the very modest paid leave, and then up to 12 weeks. Yeah.
But we don't know about, because I know they had the low end on it. Just when we did some of the national legislative conferences and stuff, and we were looking at best practices, what I kept seeing is we were hosting here, but there was a lot of people talking about it, that they had significantly a larger number of weeks that they allowed. And so I just didn't know if we had new figures of how other states have gone to increase that amount because of the not only being the right thing, but also the positive economic impact that it's had. So I didn't know if you had those numbers in front of you.
Hold on just 1 second, Senator Yates.
We can get those numbers from a Better Balance, but for example, Tennessee has 6 weeks. All of our neighboring states, except for West Virginia, offer at least 6 weeks. I think that Ohio just moved it up to 12. Some in the private sector offer 6 months, so we can provide a more average number. But other southern states, for example, Alabama and Mississippi just advanced legislation, I believe, that offers 6 weeks. But nowhere in the country, nowhere from public to private employer, has there been an example where there has been a 10-year wait period in between. We've never heard of that.
Any other questions from members? Seeing none, I'm going to have the cabinet come back up, if you would, please. What I'm going to do first is open it up for questions, and then I'm going to allow you guys to respond in any way you feel appropriate. So I'll start us off just for clarification on the 6 weeks and the 10 years. Mm-hmm. So let's say, I'm assuming you can split that. So let's say you have 2 children in 10 years, you could do 3 weeks for one child and then retain the 3 weeks. And if you had another child, you could split it that way. Is that correct?
That is correct. You can use the entire 10-year period to use the 6 weeks. So if you use a portion of it up front and you want to reserve the other 3 weeks for the second one, that is correct. Yes.
Okay, thank you. Any other questions from members? Senator Adams has a question.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I was just curious if you can kind of expound upon the policy decision for the 10 years.
So the intent, if you look in our leave reg that's before you under the sick leave provisions of the reg, we have a current program that we've had in place for years that if you stay with state government for 10 years, at that 10-year point, you get 10 additional days of sick leave. It also says if you get to 240 months or 20 years, we'll give you an additional 10 days of sick leave. So the intent was to, we have a very comprehensive and competitive leave program, we believe, already in place. This was an enhancement, a very generous enhancement, we think, to add those additional 6 weeks of leave, and we matched it up with under our sick leave at the 10-year and 20-year mark.
And just one other note, both annual and sick, they roll forward. So those don't expire. Employees actually accrue those and can keep those.
Right. So in total, every year you get 5 to 7 days of leave. We have almost 3 weeks of paid holidays that employees have off. So if they utilize this new 6-week bucket of leave, you have 14 to 16 weeks that you can use for the birth or placement of a child or a serious health condition, which we think is extremely generous.
Could you slow down and go over that one more time?
Sure.
So
Sure.
Go over the Senator Yates will be up next, but go into how they roll over. So
Sure.
So what are you're allowed this much for 1 year, and then
right.
How much can roll over and how long? Go over that one more time.
Sure, definitely. So with your annual leave, as we said, you get anywhere from 12 to 24 days, depending on if you're a rookie or an incumbent employee. So every year on your annual leave, if you don't use it all, a portion of it can roll over to the following year. If you're a new employee, up to 30 days can roll over to the following year. If you're an incumbent senior employee, up to 60 days can roll over to the following year. In your sick leave,
is there a cap?
There is the cap for new employees. It's I believe it's 30 days. Is that correct, Jamie?
It's on page 2 of the regulation. There's a chart that shows you how much carry forward for annual time, but that you don't lose that. It actually rolls into your sick time, and that just continues to grow.
So every year you can carry over annual leave and you can carry over sick leave. So, you don't lose that 5 to 7 weeks. It's not use or lose every year. If you don't use it, a portion of it rolls over to the following year. So you not only have this 5 to 7 weeks you're going to accrue every year, you may have rollover from the previous year. And then now you have this new bucket of 6 weeks of leave. So and in addition to that, under KRS Chapter 18A, Point 196 and 197, employees also have the ability to borrow sick leave from other employees. So we have, I believe the comments today are made sort of in a vacuum, if you will. This is not the only thing we do. We have all kinds of leave benefits, leave sharing, and leave rollover that we believe this is just a great enhancement to that already very generous program.
So I'm looking at the chart right here.
Mm-hmm.
So it's 0 to 59 months is 12 per year. 60 to 119 months, 15 per year, and on and on. It goes all the way up 240 months. So you're telling me in the 0 to 59 months, 12 per year, if not used, those 12 just roll over. They just keep rolling over.
That's correct.
And so theoretically, somebody could rack up quite a few days.
Yes.
Absolutely.
Pretty quickly.
Yes, sir.
So if there's any complaint about the new policy, it's for those people who are fairly new to state government and things of that nature.
May not have built up other leaves, correct?
Gotcha.
That's true. And that was a big part of this program. A big reason to develop this program was for our brand new employees who have no leave. But, those employees, as soon as they sign up every month, they accrue an annual and a sick day. So we believe they'll accrue leave pretty quickly. But for those folks that are brand new to state government and don't have any leave, this is going to be an extremely generous benefit for them.
Senator Yates.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Thank you both. I think as looking at this, we should all recognize that I think the goal, we all have a similar goal, is to kind of balance the fiscal responsibility, but also be a place where government would be welcoming to young mothers and try to make sure that it's a high quality of life, and also worry about these just really sickening statistics of us being one of the highest of mortality rates and issues with infants. And so part of what we look at is how do we lead? Because this is an important issue for all of us. And I'm thinking about, when I have my kids, definitely, it never happens at the perfect timing, right? There's never a great time. But the new mom or new couple that has the baby, a lot of times new moms do have to miss work, sick. They use those sick days because babies are sick. When they're coming, especially when it's working moms, sometimes there's other daycare, things like that. So I think that's one of the hardest categories for people to build up that sick leave. And we know that. I've had several young employees in my law office, and I know that's part of it. Sometimes I'm going to have a snotty-nosed kid in the office, sometimes that it's part of it, and sometimes they just have to take off. So I think that's we're looking, how do we retain that? And I'm wondering if there's a way that you could balance that out. Instead of having this 10-year, which is usually there's a 10-year gap between kids, it's probably an accident. I'm saying that as a joke, but there is that. Is there a way to kind of to build in, like, let's say after 5 years, is there a way that at least they would have 3 years built up? So it's kind of the pro rata, move it in instead of this magic clip. Because I'm thinking what will really happen is if they have their baby, they take their 6 weeks, which we would encourage them to do, to build by it and make sure that's right. And they got a new child, so they're being a mom, and then they become pregnant again. Well, if they don't have time off, they're probably going to leave state government. That's what we've seen over and over again. So how do we retain that? And I was thinking, so maybe we could have some kind of balanced approach that would build up instead of this magic 10-year mark. And I understand why, because we wanted to put similar comparisons. But this is different because we're trying to address other issues other than just the retention and showing up at work. We're also addressing this terrible mortality rate and also trying to lead the state government. So I was just thinking, wouldn't be that big of a change that if we did some kind of pro rata, like instead of just being a start 6 weeks over after 10 years, maybe after a couple years you get so many weeks, or after 5 years you get 3 weeks. That way it may be more conducive in retaining these employees. Just a thought.
Yeah, we definitely appreciate your feedback, Senator Yates. We definitely, this is a new program we're rolling out. We definitely think this is a good starting point when we look at all of our other benefits. We'll definitely take that feedback and all these other comments that we've received under advisement, and kind of we want to roll the program out with all the other options we have and see how it works. And we definitely come before you all probably once or twice a year. We're always reviewing our regs and trying to make things work the best way they can. So we will definitely take that under advisement and
we're all
keep that in mind.
Team, so
absolutely.
We appreciate you.
Absolutely,
Thank you.
Yes.
Thank you so much. Any other comments or questions from members? Seeing none, please call the next regulation. Thank you.
Thank you all for your time.
Boards and commissions. Board of Nursing, 201 KAR 2240, 2600, 2620, and 201 2600 has a staff suggested amendment.
201 KR 2240 amends to update statute references and remove obsolete fees, including fees for paper application copies, written requests for validation of work permits, licenses, or credentials, and release of NCLEX results to another state nursing board, and amends to add the board shall assess and collect fees established in reference statutes. 201 KR 2600 amends to use standards for accreditation set forth by the Midwifery Education and Accreditation Council instead of the Midwives Alliance of North America because it was permanently dissolved on March 1 of 2024. Amends to standardize clinical experience or preceptorship requirements for an LCPM training program with the national standard, and amends to update material incorporated by reference. 201 KR 2620 amends to reduce fees for initial licensure, renewal, and reinstatement from $500 to $165, and amends to change the length and renewal periods to be done in accordance with 201 KR 20085 instead of 1 year. The staff amendment amends various sections to comply with KRS Chapter 13A.
Would you please state your name for the record?
Kelly Jenkins, Executive Director, Kentucky Board of Nursing.
Thank you. There is a staff amendment. Is there a motion for approval of the staff amendment? We have a motion and a second without objection, so ordered. Do we have any questions from members of the committee for the Board of Nursing? I have one question. You don't see this very often at all, so I got to ask the question. So we're lowering a fee from $500 to $165. What are we doing here?
So whenever the LCPMs were first given to the board, I think it was in 2019, we had to create a lot of, regulations. Everything was kind of created from the very beginning. And so now that We have them in our ORBS platform, which is a database that's free from the National Council of State Boards of Nursing. So we were able to reduce their cost to be more equivalent to that of a nurse practitioner midwife.
Thank you. I'm sure they really appreciate that.
Yes.
Any other questions from members? Seeing none, please call the next regulation. Thank you.
Board of Social Work, 201 KAR 23012, emergency.
201 KR 23012E establishes and incorporates by reference the rules adopted by the Social Work Licensure Compact as of February 5th of 2025 and includes the rule on rulemaking that establishes the rule promulgation process of the Social Work Licensure Compact Commission.
Would you please state your name for the record?
Mark Kelly, Executive Director of the Kentucky Board of Social Work.
Thank you.
Mark with a K, Mark Bringelman, Contract Counsel.
Thank you so much. There are no amendments on this regulation. Do we have any questions from members on this regulation? Seeing none, please call the next regulation. Thank you.
Thank you.
Board of Examiners of Psychology, 201 KAR 26320.
201 KR 26320 establishes board member per diem and reimbursement rates.
Would you please identify yourself for the record?
Mark Bringelman, Contract Counsel for the Kentucky Board of Examiners of Psychology.
Thank you. There are no amendments. Any questions from members of the committee? Seeing none, please call the next regulation. Did you have a question, Senator Yates? I believe that's Mark with a K, I believe. Please call the next regulation. Thank you.
Kentucky Fire Commission, 739 KAR 2050 and 2140.
These regulations are being amended to change the deadline to submit a state aid report of purchase and update the reporting and auditing requirements to conform with statutory changes.
Would you please identify yourself for the record?
Bruce Roberts, Director of the Fire Commission.
John Wood, outside counsel for the Fire Commission.
Thank you so much. There are no amendments. Do we have any questions from members? Seeing none, please call the next regulation. Thank you.
All.
Energy and Environment Cabinet, Public Service Commission, 807 KAR 5015, emergency.
807-5015 emergency amends requirements for utility pole attachments to expedite expansion of broadband by streamlining the application completeness review, allowing attachers with multiple pending applications to prioritize applications, increasing from 1,000 to 3,000 the number of poles that may be requested through a single application, streamlining and clarifying invoice and payment processes, increasing from 60 to 90 days the time for an attacher to file an application exceeding 3,000 poles, establishing minimum content requirements for special contracts for applications exceeding 3,000 poles, facilitating the complaint process for a special contract that cannot be negotiated within 15 business days of the start of good faith efforts, and reducing from 180 to 60 days the window for a final order by the Commission.
Please state your name for the record.
My name is Jeb Penny. I'm an executive advisor with the Public Service Commission.
Thank you so much. There are no amendments. Any questions from members of the committee? Seeing none, unfortunately, the legislature knows a lot about pole attachment agreements, more than I ever expected to know. So thank you so much. Next regulation, please.
Cabinet for Health and Family Services, Department for Medicaid Services, 907 KAR 1039, 1835 ordinary, 3100 ordinary, 3210 ordinary, 7015 ordinary, 10840 ordinary, 16005, 16010, 16015, 16020, and 16025. All regulations except 907 KAR 1835 have staff suggested amendments.
907 KR 1039 amends to remove the annual limit on the number of hearing aid battery replacements that can be reimbursed by Medicaid, update the fee schedule named the Kentucky Medicaid Audiology Fee Schedule, including to provide a website link where the fee schedule is available, and delete material incorporated by reference. The staff amendment amends various sections to comply with CARES Chapter 13A. 907 KAR 1835 amends to delete and update reimbursement methodology to reflect the approval of new federal 1915C waivers, including to allow for higher reimbursement for providers and conform to KRS Chapter 13A requirements.
907 KR 3100 and 3210 amend acquired brain injury waiver and brain injury long-term care waiver reimbursement provisions to make updates to the Medicaid reimbursement methodologies, increase the federal reimbursement of rates for consistency with new federal 1915C waiver rates, include that the department's coverage of services is contingent upon federal approval and receipt of federal funds, update website links, and make technical corrections. The staff suggested amendments update the name of the Vulnerable Adult Maltreatment Registry and make technical corrections. 907 KR 7015 amends reimbursement provisions for home and community-based waiver services to update the reimbursement methodology consistent with new federal 1915C waivers and make technical corrections. The staff suggested amendment makes technical corrections to comply with the drafting requirements of KRS Chapter 13A. 907 KR 10840 establishes the Kentucky Trauma Hospital Rate Improvement (KTHRI) program required by KRS Chapter 205, amended via Senate Bill 280 from the 2024 regular session of the General Assembly, subject to continued federal approval. The Cabinet states the program requires participating providers in rural hospitals that treat a high percentage of Medicaid patients to meet specific quality metrics in order to receive enhanced quarterly payments for inpatient, outpatient, and professional services provided. The staff suggested amendment clarifies that the quality metrics that hospitals must meet to receive the supplemental payment are established in federal law, deletes an example, and makes technical corrections to comply with the drafting requirements of KRS Chapter 13A. 907 KR 16005 establishes definitions used in new 907 KR Chapter 16 administrative regulations relating to Medicaid services provided to specific populations through 1915I state plan amendments. The staff suggested amendment corrects federal and state statutory references, clarifies definitions, and makes technical corrections to comply with the drafting requirements of KRS Chapter 13A. 907 KR 16010 establishes participation and eligibility requirements for a new 1915I home and community-based service program called the Recovery, Independence, Support, and Engagement RISE Initiative, serving Medicaid recipients who have a primary diagnosis of serious mental illness or substance use disorder. The staff suggested amendment makes technical corrections to comply with the drafting requirements of KRS Chapter 13A.
907 KAR 16015 establishes provider participation and enrollment criteria for the 1915I RISE Initiative. The staff amendment amends various sections to comply with the drafting and formatting requirements of KRS Chapter 13A and makes technical changes.
907 KR 16020 establishes covered services for the 1915I RISE Initiative and amends various sections to comply with KRS Chapter 13A.
907 KR 16025 establishes department reimbursement and provider appeal provisions related to the new Medicaid RISE Initiative and references a newly created 1915I fee schedule. The staff suggested amendment makes technical corrections to comply with the drafting requirements of KRS Chapter 13A.
If you would, please state your name for the record.
Dr. Leslie Hoffman, Deputy Commissioner for the Department of Medicaid.
Jonathan Scott, Chief Legislative and Regulatory Officer, Medicaid.
Thank you so much. That those regulations took the whole staff to speak about. So there are staff amendments. Is there a motion for approval? The staff amendments. We have a motion. We have Senator Yates has a second. Without objection, is so ordered. Any questions from members on these Medicaid regulations? Seeing none, please call the next regulation. Thank you.
That concludes our agenda for today. Our next meeting is currently scheduled for June 10th, which is a Tuesday at 1 p.m. July 8th.
July, yeah. That would be quick.
It would.
So everybody got that? The next meeting is scheduled for July 8th at this time. Any other business to come before the committee? Seeing none, this meeting's adjourned.